I am Lant Lemmon with the Applications and Records section. And today we're going to discuss extensions, proofs, affidavits, and certificates of beneficial use. Also, title updates, including the report of conveyance and deed addendums. And if we have questions, can we write them down and we will ask in the end. I've got a title manager back here, and I've got Eric Jones to help answer some of the questions. I'm somewhat new, so. But first, let's finish the application process flow chart where Chase left off by watching a video explaining proofs that are processing towards a certificate of beneficial use and proof extension request applications.
This video is part 3 of a 3-part video series describing the administrative process that is followed for water rights applications. This multi-step flowchart you are seeing was created as a visual aid to summarize the process from filing to certification. We will use this chart to describe the administrative steps that are completed once a water right application is approved. Part 1 of this video series covers the application process from application filing to the decision of the state engineer. Part 2 of this video series describes what happens to an application after a decision is rendered and the administrative remedies parties may seek if they believe they are aggrieved by the decision. Part 3 of this video series covers the administrative process once the application is approved with established time limits and the applicant works to complete the project and place the water to beneficial use. This is shown in the green, orange, and brown sections at the bottom of the flowchart from right to left. The water right application process shown is authorized under Utah Code Title 73, Chapter 3 for appropriation of water. This flowchart process is applicable to applications to appropriate, permanent change applications, and exchange applications. There are other authorized types of applications that follow similar administrative steps or portions of these steps. However, this video is intended to focus on the administrative process for these 3 most common water right applications. For part 3 of this video series, let's take a look at what happens once an application is approved by the state engineer and the final steps necessary to perfect a water right through the proof submission and certification process. We will also discuss the process for requesting an extension of time to file proof of beneficial use. Once an application is approved, an approval letter will be sent to the applicant. The approval letter will state the quantity of water approved, the location of the point or points of diversion, and the approved use of water. The approval letter will also specify any conditions to the approval. The approval will also specify a proof due date. Proof is documentation of the completion of works and application of water to beneficial use pursuant to the terms and limitations of an approved application. Proof is submitted via a proof form available on our website. Proof of beneficial use is evidence required by the state engineer before a certificate of beneficial use perfecting the water right will be issued. A 60-day proof due notice is sent to the applicant prior to the proof due date. The applicant has 60 days from receipt of the proof due letter to either submit proof of beneficial use or request an extension of time. An extension of time request provides the applicant additional time to complete a project and put the water to beneficial use. An approved application can lapse even if the water is being put to beneficial use, if neither proof nor an extension of time request is received by the proof due date. We will now discuss the extension of time request for filing a proof or affidavit of beneficial use with the Division of Water Rights. This may be required if the applicant is unable to fully place the approved uses or water quantities to beneficial use. For example, project delays may occur due to financial hardship, construction or land development may fall behind schedule, or ownership may change and the new owner is in the process of updating title when the proof due date arrives. Once an extension of time request is filed, the clock for the proof due date stops. The regional office will review the extension request and recommend that the extension be approved or denied. The regional office will then send the extension request to the applications office for final review. If the applicant has shown due diligence in completing a project and can show progress towards project completion, the applicant may be approved for multiple extension requests. If the extension of time request exceeds 14 years, then the extension request must be advertised in the newspaper, similar to the advertisement of the initial application to appropriate, change, or exchange. If the extension of time request is granted by the state engineer, a new proof due date will be assigned to the application. At this point, the application process moves back to the approved section of the flowchart, and the applicant has until the new proof due date specified on the extension of time approval to file proof or file another extension request. If the extension of time request is denied, then the applicant may file a request for reconsideration and start the appeal process. The appeal process is detailed in the center of the blue section at the top of the flowchart. The appeal process is discussed in Part 2 of the application process video series. We will now discuss the process of filing proof of beneficial use and certification of a water right. If the water uses do not exceed 1 residence, irrigation of 1/4 acre, and watering of 10 livestock, the applicant may be eligible to submit an affidavit of beneficial use. If residential, irrigation, or livestock uses exceed these small domestic usage amounts, then the applicant is required to file a proof of beneficial use. The proof of beneficial use must be submitted by a licensed professional, land surveyor, or engineer. The requirement for a licensed professional to complete the proof ensures an accurate survey and map of the diversion works and place of use. The professional is also required to measure the amount of water diverted using the scientific method and attest under their license that conditions stated in the proof comply with the conditions of approval mandated by the state engineer. Once the proof or affidavit of beneficial use is submitted to our office, it is reviewed by the regional office area where the water use occurs. There are 7 regional offices that cover 7 separate areas with corresponding boundaries within the state. The regional office staff will check for completeness of the proof or affidavit of beneficial use. The staff will confirm that the uses, place of use, and point of diversion are correct and that any conditions listed in the approval have been met. The regional office staff may visit the location of water use to confirm that the actual uses conform to the approved uses and those listed on the proof or affidavit of beneficial use. If there are issues in the proof or affidavit of beneficial use, then the regional office staff may reach out to the applicant for clarification. The regional office will send the completed draft certificate along with the proof to the application office for subsequent review. If the draft certificate and proof documentation conform to the approval, then the application office issues the final certificate of beneficial use for review by the state engineer. If problems are found with the proof or affidavit of beneficial use, then the application office may request further clarification from the regional office staff or the applicant. Once the certificate of beneficial use is issued to the applicant, they should review the document, check for any errors, and if errors are found, report those errors to the Division of Water Rights. If the applicant believes that they are aggrieved by the decision, then the applicant may file for reconsideration within 20 days of the date of certificate letter. The appeal process is detailed in the center of the blue section at the top of the flowchart. The appeal process is discussed in Part 2 of the application process video series. If no errors are found and the applicant agrees with the certificate, then the applicant should retain a copy of the certificate of beneficial use for their records. The applicant should then file the certificate of beneficial use with the county where the uses occur. It may be necessary to record their certificate in more than one county if the point of diversion or place of use are located in adjacent counties. This is the final step in the certification process. The applicant has perfected the water right through certification and should continue placing the water to beneficial use. This concludes the 3-part video series on the application process.
Okay, so let's backtrack a little to make sure we understand proof of beneficial use. Submitting,
Questions to the end.
please.
Okay.
Yeah. Submitting or filing proof is generally the final step in perfecting your water right and receiving a certificate of beneficial use. Proof can be submitted once the project is complete. Okay, so after completing part 1 and 2 of the application process, you should have been issued an order of the state engineer or OSE. If the water right was approved, the order will have a proof due date, which is typically 5 to 7 years after the application was approved. It is not mandatory to wait until the date to submit your proof. If your entire project is complete, all water under the application is put to full beneficial use and conforms to the OSE's conditions of approval, the proof can be filed. There's no penalty for submitting the proof early. Proof of beneficial use is submitted on an application to appropriate, a change application, or an exchange application. The forms for preparing the proof can be found on the division's website. You can pick them up in person, or forms can be also mailed or emailed by request. The proof must be prepared by a professional engineer or land surveyor that's licensed in the state of Utah. They will be responsible for the accuracy of the proof. This includes surveying the point of diversion and place of use, preparing a map depicting the attributes of the water right and flow measurement at the point of diversion. Using a proof also lends credibility to the proof document and ensures that all forms and documents are filled out correctly. Once the proof forms are submitted to our office, the regional office or the Salt Lake City's applications and records section will review the proof for accuracy and completeness. The water user or proof professional may be contacted by the division requesting additional information or clarification. You will receive a letter stating that the proof has been received and filed, and regional office staff may conduct a site visit. If the proof is unacceptable, for example, missing data, incomplete map, or includes unapproved uses, points of diversion, or places of use, the regional office will attempt to correct those issues with the proof professional and applicant. In some cases, if a proof is different than the approved OSC's conditions of approval, a new change application must be filed. In most cases, the previously submitted proof may be applied to the new change application. Next, let's talk about affidavits of beneficial use. Filing an affidavit is an alternative way for an owner to certificate his or her water right application without hiring a professional proof engineer. To be eligible to file an affidavit as proof, the uses must be 1 residence, a 1/4 acre of irrigation or less, 10 head of livestock or less, and the water use does not include any other uses in addition to those 3 listed above. If any of the uses exceed these quantities, a proof must be submitted by a licensed professional.
Can you repeat those uses, please?
It is 1/4 acre of irrigation or less, 10 head of livestock or less, and 1 domestic. A water right owner can use the online affidavit wizard tool on the division's website to prepare an affidavit. The interactive tool will walk you step by step, populating the affidavit forms and creating a map. This map shows the parcel, beneficial uses, and the source of water. Using this tool may minimize the amount of time we have your proof in processing stage. In addition to documents produced by the online affidavit tool, the water right owner will need to submit a certificate of occupancy. This document can be usually obtained from the city, county, or municipality that issued the building permit for the residence. A tax notice may be submitted if a certificate of occupancy can't be obtained. Instead of preparing the documents with the online affidavit tool, you can use the paper form found on our website, but you will be responsible for generating an accurate map that meets the mapping standards outlined in the affidavit map instructions. Also, in addition to the certificate of occupancy or tax notice, a plat map will need to be submitted. This is a map of the property created by a surveyor, which can be obtained from the county recorder's office. Once you have completed the affidavit, you will need to print the form and map. The form must be signed and notarized by everyone who is listed as an owner on the right. In most cases, if your water right is based on shares of stock in an irrigation company or is a contract with a conservancy district or a pipeline company, they will be named as a co-owner on the right and will need to sign the proof or affidavit. Remember, all signatures must be notarized. Please note, even if you have a small domestic water right, if you don't feel comfortable filling out an affidavit yourself, you can hire a proof professional to help you with an affidavit or even a full proof. Once you receive your certificate, you are responsible for the accuracy of the certificate and to continue using the water for the uses that are certificated. If you want to change the nature of use, place of use, or point of diversion, you will need to file a change application. The water user may choose to record the certificate with the county recorder's office. So that concludes an overview of proof of beneficial use. Now let's look at title, water right title, and how conveyance of ownership works. Water rights are transferred by deed in essentially the same manner as real estate. They're either transferred by land appurtenance or water deed. Appurtenant water rights transfer silently with the land, which may be the most misinterpreted area of water right title transfer. If the water rights are not mentioned in the land deed, then they transfer with the land as property to the new owner. Owners sometimes believe that if they don't mention water rights during a land sale, they are retaining the water rights. But the opposite is true. Failing to mention water rights means they transfer silently with the land. In order to retain the water right, specific language would need to be included in the deed. To convey ownership of water rights, the deed or deeds must be recorded in all counties where the water is used and diverted. The county recorder's office maintains a record of land deeds and addendums. Water deeds and assignments, which are transfers of unapproved or approved but unperfected water rights, are also recorded. Please note the Utah State Division of Water Rights does not have a direct link with various county recorders' offices. The division relies on the county recorder to send the update ownership information via email or mail. The records maintained by the state engineer are water right application data, certificates of beneficial use, ownership information, and other water right related documents. The owner of record is whoever submitted the original application or anyone that has transferred ownership of the right via an addendum to the deed or a report of conveyance. On this slide, I put in there to show you how easy it is to make a mistake, and I should have hired a title professional. So we can just go by that guy. That was a joke. Because the Division of Water Rights is reliant on the water user, new owner, or county recorder's office to relay new ownership information, discrepancies often arise between the two offices. To address this, buyers and title companies should not assume that when property ownership was updated and recorded, water right ownership was automatically updated. The only way that water right ownership is updated by recording a deed is if the deed has a water right addendum attached to it. This is a specific form supplied by the Division of Water Rights that must be signed by both grantor and grantee. completed correctly and recorded with a deed. A description of the right on the deed itself is not sufficient to update water right ownership. Once a deed with addendum is recorded, the deed and addendum are emailed to the Division of Water Rights by the County Recorder's Office. If the addendum is acceptable, the water right ownership is updated to the grantee listed on the deed. If the deed and addendum are not acceptable, ownership update will require new owner to file a report of conveyance with this office. Ownership may be updated using an addendum to a land deed or a water deed. In this case, the deed does not need to list the water right number. If an owner is using a report of conveyance form as shown in this slide, then the deed attached must list the water right number. If the deed does not list a water right number, the prospective owner must hire an attorney, professional engineer, title professional, or professional land surveyor to submit a report of conveyance. The licensed professional will assist the new owner in reestablishing a pertinence between the water right and specific parcel of land described in the deed. They will also be familiar with mapping standards and administrative rules governing submission of maps to the state engineer's office. A separate report of conveyance has to be filled out for each water right to be updated. A report of conveyance must include all deeds showing transfer of ownership from the owner listed on the division records to the new owner. For example, if a water right was originally filed in 1900 and no one updated title as it was passed down through a family, the new owner will have to show a chain of title, including all deeds from the original applicant through each person, trust, or entity that the title was passed to the prospective owner. This process may face challenges equal to or greater than transferring title to land or a home. For this reason, it is often beneficial to hire a professional as it is typically done for title transfer during the sale of a home or land. This is a 100% conveyance form and a portion form. As the name implies, if you are updating title on 100% interest of a water right, you would use the 100% interest form. The portion form would be used if you are only conveying a portion of a water right. For example, a water right has a total of 5 acres of irrigation. You seek to transfer ownership of a 1/4 acre of irrigation. Using the portion form would allow you to update ownership on a 1/4 acre and would reduce the grantor's interest in the water right to 4.75 acres of irrigation. Next, let's look at land and water deed addendums. Utah Code 7338 states, the state engineer shall consider a water rights addendum that is recorded and forwarded to the state engineer by a county recorder as a submitted report of water right conveyance under subsection 3. This means that an addendum may be attached to a land or water deed to convey water rights. It creates a dialogue between the buyer and the seller about which water rights, if any, are being conveyed with the land and which water rights are being reserved. Be aware that there are 2 water right addendums. There is the land deed addendum and a water deed addendum. The grantor and grantee should confirm that the correct type of addendum is attached to the correct type of deed. A few key takeaways regarding title. Many reports of conveyance transfer by appurtenance, which may require professionals to submit a report of conveyance. Transfers by appurtenance require a map that meets the state mapping standards. Simple transfers can be completed by the owner as long as the deeds list the water right number. Competing reports of conveyance or title controversies are considered civil matters concerning real property. Civil disputes are resolved through a civil litigation process and not the office of the state engineer. Purchasing and updating ownership to a water right is separate from the purchase and title update to other real properties such as land or home. However, both can be very involved and may require the assistance of a title professional. Potential buyer should never rely solely on records kept by the Division of Water Rights. The County Recorder's Office is the office of record for recorded deeds and other documentation concerning the transfer of real property. If you have any questions, the division has a YouTube channel including videos on title, an in-depth look into the application process, the proof process, and more. Additionally, you can call the Division of Water Rights directly and speak with a water rights professional. Thank you for listening, and I do have some more professionals to help with questions on anything, proof, certificates, title. I can repeat anything if you need me to repeat anything.
So, let's say a water user submits a proof of beneficial use, and that the state engineer issues a certificate where maybe the water user got a haircut, and then I suppose that they could withdraw that proof and then file an extension later.
Certificated? Okay.
So once the certificate is issued, if you don't agree with what's on the certificate, you have to request reconsideration for that certificate and basically appeal that certificate with our office and state why you don't believe it's correct. A certificate will reflect what's on. Here's the approval, the application that's approved, the approval order, and the proof all need to match, and that's what should be on the certificate. So you really shouldn't be surprised when you get the certificate if it doesn't. It should match what you submitted on your proof, but if it doesn't and you don't like it, then you go through the process to request reconsideration and work with our office to get a certificate you believe to be correct. So
hopefully you stopped it at that change application. When you got the approved change application, you said, well, I don't want that haircut. I want to ask for reconsideration. You stopped it there before you even went to proof certificate.
Okay.
So if a water deed is filed that breaks that appurtenance, what happens to that water right in the future?
Ryan, would you like to, or Eric?
I was hoping you would take an attempt, but
Oh,
so the water right's held, right, by whoever owns the title still, and hopefully they're still using it somewhere. But if it's severed and the land's been sold to somebody else and now they have a water right, that water right is still subject to use, and if it's not used, then within 7 years of non-use, it'll be subject to forfeiture. And someone would have to take it to court and say, this water right hasn't been used, it should be forfeited, should be put back into the pot for other people to use. But you can sever the two water rights, and you can file what's called a non-use application, which will then protect the water right from the date of the filing of that non-use application for a number of years, typically 7 years, and then you can file a new non-use application. So it's best to keep the water right and land. I know. Did you have more questions? Because there's a hand over here. It's best to keep the water and land together so it's easier for people to track the beneficial use that's occurring, but you can sever them, and then you can file other documentation to protect the water right that's not being used.
I wanted to make sure that I understood what you were saying. If water transfers silently and you buy a property and you just get water rights with it, then I guess you have to do this report of conveyance in addition to the everything else that happens, just to the division of water rights.
yes, sir.
Okay, great. And if this water, this non-use that you were just talking about, Chase, it goes back into the, it's Eric, sorry, back into the pot for others. But if it's in a non-appropriation basin, how do you get that pot?
So that's a typical question. So the water has probably already been appropriated by somebody else. So if a water right is forfeited, it just means a junior user in that same system now gets more reliable water, I guess is a way to say it. So if it's not open to new appropriations, there's really no way to appropriate that water that got returned back to the pot. It's already been appropriated. It's kind of an interesting concept. Does that make any sense? Yes and no? Give it 10 years, you'll get it.
So when looking at the proof of beneficial use compared to the proof affidavit, if you're hired to do this, choosing between the two, if you're on a site that's like 3 acres, but the as surveyed outdoor irrigation is say a 1/4 acre after they're done completing their project, but there's potential for that to grow later to say, a 1/2 acre, 3/4 of an acre of irrigated use. Do you need to consider the potential use or just the current?
So you'd be certificating that first water right for the 1/4 acre, and the professional can they usually use the proof form instead of an affidavit. That would be a sole supply, and then they would acquire additional water rights. Sole supply, certificates. They have multiple certificates is one way to do it. But yeah, does that make sense?
Okay, yeah,
No, you
so-
don't have to say my property's 3 acres, so I can't use the affidavit. It's what you're certificating, the amount of irrigation you're certificating, uses that you're certificating.
And if they want to expand in the future, then they need to provide additional proofs?
As they get additional water rights, right? You're saying they have a large water right, but they're only ready to certificate 0.25 acres?
Exactly.
So they'd want to probably seg that off of the parent water right to create a new water right with the 0.25 acres of irrigation, certificate it, and then keep this in update, not lapsed, right? Extensions or whatever. The other water right is still good until they're ready to proof it.
Gotcha. Okay.
You guys are asking some fun questions. No more questions for Lant?